The Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by CNMC, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat Commission.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what a mess! All the lodged wheat in the province of Ontario, particularly in the central part. Man, oh man, what does it mean? Well, it means that we have an awesome wheat crop, and now it means we have to try to get that wheat crop out. So what is it about? It's about combine setup. It's about maybe a pre-harvest glyphosate, and it's about working with the elevator industry. Andrew Dawson from Bacres Grain is going to be with me here in a minute to talk about how the elevators can help us deal with this crop. So let's go. First off, combine setup. I'm no combine expert. There's lots of people listening that are way more combine experts than I am. But there's also a bunch of people who are saying, man, I haven't dealt with this before. You know, how do I deal with it? First, you're going to end up putting the whole crop through the combine. It's just about impossible because we're so tight to the ground. Some of this wheat has been steamrolled. We have to get under that crop. It means everything comes through the combine. That means you got to go slow. Particularly with a walker machine, you have to give those walkers a chance to get the grain out of the straw, or we're going to have green strips behind combines from one end of the field to the next. Second, your reel becomes incredibly important. Forward and down. So as you combine, you want that reel to be picking that wheat up if you can, so that it gets the heads up and over the cutter bar before it comes into the combine. Third, can we do anything about the knife? The answer is yes. Use lifters. We use lifters all the time in edible beans. That can work. We also can put them on and we can run underneath the crop, and that will help lift it up. Now, of course, if you run right with the way that it's down, the lifter's not going to help because the stalks are back there and it just doesn't get a chance to get underneath. So to really make lifters work, we actually always want to combine across the way that the wheat is down. When we do that, it really challenges the dividers, because the divider either has to pick that grain up and let it flow past the header, or it's got to divide that and the reel has to bring that crop in. So if we can combine that way, we can do it both ways. The other thing that I'll admit, because I have an auger header, but auger headers don't work as well as draper headers. Draper headers do a really nice job. We can get lower with the draper. The feed of the draper is more uniform, and so all of those things can help when we're in the down grain. Of course, the last thing that nobody wants to do, but if you absolutely have to, then you combine one way. And you combine so that the heads go into the header first, and that makes sense because they're the highest part. We can get the knife down underneath them, and then they feed in, and slug feeding is going to be an issue because the chances of it feeding perfectly smooth with an auger header, it's just not very likely. Slug feeding means more challenges getting that wheat out of the straw. Nothing you can do about that, but that's sort of the combine aspect. Now, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about fungicides. We're going to talk about disease. We're going to talk about the elevator. So I'm here now with Andrew Dawson from Bacres Grain. Welcome, Andrew. Andrew, you drive a lot of the area. Tell me what the wheat looks like in your travels.
Yeah, so I cover a fair-sized swath on my commute to work, both in my trading area as well. And I'm going through Middlesex, Lambton, Kent counties, and it just seems that everyone is dealing with this lodging issue to some extent.
Yeah, and so it's a real challenge, right? Because what we've done is we've all used a fusarium fungicide, and you want us to use a fusarium fungicide,
100%,
right? 100%, because we don't want high dawn in the grain. That just makes everybody's job tougher.
That's right.
Yep, so we've all used that fusarium fungicide. Of course, I've been talking all about stay green, right? And how stay green adds yield. The problem is that now we've got this lodged grain, and it's going to stay greener. And that's a real challenge. We normally, green grain, we'd cut higher, leave that straw. Can't do that this time. What happens when that grain, like notice now how close that grain is to the ground, right? and that ground is wet. It's sort of like we've changed. We went through a super dry period, correct?
Oh, we did, for sure.
Yeah, and now it's started to rain, and it seems to just keep raining, and high humidity, and as this grain or this head down by the ground, high humidity, and guess what happens? We get sprouts. When we get sprouts, how does that affect you, Andrew?
Yeah, when I look at this field, I see sprouts, and when I see sprouts, I just think of low falling number. And when we have low falling number, that affects the millability that our flour millers can produce a product that their buyers obviously want to achieve.
Yep, it just doesn't work in their process, right? It doesn't do what it needs to do. So there's sprouts, but there's not only sprouts, because when that grain is close to that wet soil, dang it, it doesn't dry out. When it's standing up in the heat of the day, it dries out. Anytime the grain is over 19% moisture, we get fusarium. And do we have a lot of fusarium to start with? The answer is no. But the big problem is these little kernels that have fusarium in them, we'd blow them out the back. But now as it stays down close to the ground, the fusarium is going to start to move, and it's going to move onto those big kernels. And so if we get all of a sudden high dawn in that grain, high fusarium counts, what can you do with that, Andrew?
Not a whole lot other than send it to the feed market, and we don't want that.
Right, exactly. It's just something that as an elevator, you can't do anything about. And so again, we have to get it out of the field quickly. Black point is another one that can happen. It's just because it's close to the ground. So what do we do about that? Well, one of the things that I think you have to start to think about, and I hate making this suggestion, but pre-harvest glyphosate, because pre-harvest glyphosate will dry that canopy out so that when I put it through the combine, it goes through easier. I don't have that green stem to fight with. I don't plug the combine, and I can actually separate that grain out. Now, be careful, because everybody knows that you can't pre-harvest glyphosate till you get that peduncle to change colors, and we've got great videos on Real Ag about that. So this is the peduncle, right? That part right beneath the head. You have to time that right, and you'll drive on the crop. That's the other thing I don't like about that. But in terms of getting the crop out of the field to give marketable grain to you, that's an important fact, right,
Oh,
Andy?
for sure, 100%.
Yeah, so let's assume if we need to, we pre-harvest glyphosate. If we can get away without, we don't. But man, if it stays wet, it will gain us 2 or 3 days if we use that pre-harvest. Once we get out of the field, Andrew, as an elevator, what can you do to help it so that I, as a grower, can actually get the crop out of the field even more quickly?
For sure. And what it sounds like, Peter, what you've just went over here now is the farmer is making all kinds of sacrifices. He's changing up his harvest plan to make, incorporate all the things he needs to do to get this crop picked up off the field and in the bin. So I think our job at the elevator is to also do that. One thing we're going to do, and I'm certainly not the only elevator in Ontario doing it, but taking this crop a little wetter and forgiving the drying charges. If we can encourage getting it harvested that much faster, not having to wait for a dry down, if and when that happens, it'll be better for everyone. It'll be better for the farmer, and it's going to preserve quality for us at the elevator as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because when it's close to the ground, it's going to shorten my combine day. Wheat picks up moisture worse than any other crop I know. Darn stuff, the dew comes at night, it goes up in moisture. Well, if I can continue to combine and not
you're going to be able to start earlier and go later. Yeah.
Exactly. I lengthen the length of my day, and so that's one of the ways that we can get this crop out of the field faster, have a quality crop delivered to you, and get the big prices that are currently happening.
Oh,
right?
Another 34 today.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Unbelievable. Just things are going good. So with that, Andrew, thank you very much. Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com. Whatever you do, get the wheat crop out of the field.
And in the bin.